You know, what's fascinating about Davos is that sometimes the most interesting conversations just happen by chance. And I ended up at the most amazing tech event here, which happens to be OpenAI's first on-ground event at Davos. And I met the two MVPs in the room. Chris, what a pleasure to have you.
Nice to meet you. Well, you're a Hall of Famer yourself, so.
And George as well. I am so glad that we can have this conversation. OpenAI for countries. What a day to launch this. What a platform to launch this particular product. Tell me a little bit more about OpenAI for countries and why it's so imperative. Especially, I'll give the viewers a little bit of a heads up because you're going to be visiting India for the AI Summit as well. Yes. George as well. How is this the most crucial juncture and the most imperative sort of platform to launch over here?
Yeah, so I'm going to let George lead with this because George is now heading OpenAI for countries.
Yeah, I'm 3 weeks into the job.
3 weeks into the job.
This is part of your orientation.
But this is, we move very fast in AI world, and particularly at OpenAI. So George.
It really feels like 3 months or 3 years.
Yeah.
No, I mean, OpenAI for countries is essentially how this firm can help countries speed up the adoption of AI and get its citizens and its enterprises and indeed its government services making full use of the technology and not allowing the technology to be underused. And some countries are doing that. And in some countries, including actually India, there's a lot of adoption, a lot of people using it and people using it quite intensely. And then in other places, not so much. And so, we talk to the countries, we're in conversations with 50 or so countries already, and I think that's only going to go up. And we're talking to them about how you can use AI to power your education system, make sure your citizens are going to be equipped for an AI future, power healthcare, and bring all the improvements that AI is bringing healthcare to your citizens, and address parts of your country where maybe there isn't such easy access to healthcare. Foster the startup culture, so you're getting the economic benefits and the companies are growing. And then doing issues like cybersecurity, natural disaster response, which obviously are tricky things for governments to deal with, but we can help. And that's all part of this initiative and kind of anticipating the questions that countries are going to have anyway and leaning into it is part of the philosophy here.
Yeah, and I'll just, if I could.
Please, of course.
As we thought about this, and you can see why it's awesome that we have
Absolutely.
the Chancellor, the Exchequer.
Someone who understands profitability.
Yes, but also understands the world.
Absolutely.
And has had, we benefit enormously from the fact that George is someone who really does understand the world and understands these issues, and it's a unique combination. So we're really privileged to have him. When we launched OpenAI for countries in May, the thesis behind it is that infrastructure is destiny. This is a transformational general purpose technology, and as you could probably tell, by the way, I get to pretend and play a technologist on stages like this. I was actually a history major in college. And when I think, yeah, see, look at the two history guys getting to play technologists, right?
I mean, I'm feeling FOMO right now. Maybe I should put in a history bit there.
But I just think, when you think about this technology, you can use examples of general purpose technology: the wheel, the transistor, the combustion engine, electricity. And I think the one that I think is maybe particularly relevant from like an India perspective is the printing press.
Yeah.
And when the printing press came out, most of the world was basically in an equivalent socioeconomic position. And those countries or regions that immediately began to access the printing press by driving literacy put themselves in the position. You could just see those economies really explode. And so as you think about us transitioning into this intelligence age, India stands like in this incredibly interesting position. I mean, George is touching on this. I mean, for OpenAI, India is our second largest market in the world from like a consumer use basis. Top 5 in the world from a developer basis. Those developers basically represent the new big businesses, small businesses, mid-sized businesses, jobs, revenue, of the future, particularly for a country that has an incredibly robust IT sector.
That's right.
And so as we think about OpenAI for countries, the AI Action Summit that India is bringing the world together around, the idea that we're building the infrastructure piece, but also then extending it, as George was talking about, into education, into healthcare, into cybersecurity, into startups.
That's right.
I think really aligns and matches up with how India, India lives in the future right now. And this is a technology that I think India is incredibly well positioned to benefit from.
Chris, you've been having conversations with so many world leaders, different governments here in Davos. I think that's the whole point of it. But then when you talk about India being the second largest market for OpenAI, you also talk about a capability overhang, right? This is something you guys have addressed today at the event as well. How do we overcome this capability overhang in AI, and most importantly here with OpenAI?
It's something that we're just touching on. George, please weigh in here. It is that literacy piece. To me, that is, you need to have the infrastructure, right? I think India, and correct me if I'm off on this, because I have to keep a lot of numbers in my head. I think there's something like 35 different languages.
Yep. And many more dialects.
Right? And many more dialects. It's not just Hindi, and right? There's a variety of languages.
By the way, ChatGPT does the voice mode does a fairly good job.
That's where I was going with this, right? Which is, we did a specific initiative in India to try to speak in as many of those languages as possible. And part of the infrastructure and data piece here is, once you can actually localize this and build like a really robust inference model, you can do the language piece, you keep the data in the country, right? You build mores, culture, context into it. But I do think it all does begin with that literacy piece. And India, because of the current penetration in the market, it sort of starts off. I mean, there is just this, something's in the Indian DNA on technology and entrepreneurship. And we obviously in the US are a huge benefit, as is the UK, and incredible immigrants who come to the country, right, and built things. And I think if you think about this as a productivity generating technology, can you take that talent that's in India and grow it in India so it's of, by, and for India?